So, a lot of people like Emerson and Thoreau, the transcendentalists, they believed in isolation, connecting to nature, creativity, and they thought it was a good and necessary part of the human experience. Do you think you'd ever want to go out into nature and live out there by yourself at all?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've kind of tried it before too when I became a monk last summer, 2 summers ago.
Really? What'd you do? What'd you do there?
Well, part of being a monk is isolation. Every night, meditate for 2 hours or more. So, yeah, I think that was a really kind of weird experience, but at the same time, I got a lot out of it. Got a lot of time to ponder on things. What about you? Have you tried it before, or?
I've never tried it. But did you ponder a lot of the things that Thoreau was talking about? Maybe the issues with our society and everything? Did you ever come to realizations or at all, or were you just connecting with yourself more?
To be honest, it's more personal, I think, because the head monk, which gives us kind of speech or sermon every time we meditate, would talk more about personal life, how to focus on one thing at a time, or family, focusing on that more. I didn't really think about the broader sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, whenever I'm outside or just in the woods or whatever, I'll just look around and look at all the peacefulness around me, and I just sometimes think, why is there ever violence in the world? Why does anyone ever feel the need? And I would love to believe that everyone inside them has goodness inside them, and that humans aren't naturally violent. But from the experiences of Martin Luther King, it does seem that many people are naturally violent, and it's a problem with our society.
Well, what's contrary to that is transcendentalism comes out as an opposition to rationality.
Mm-hmm.
Enlightenment came before transcendentalism. It's supposed to be rational, and you're not, killing anyone isn't good. If that's not rational,
Mm-hmm.
then it's supposed to be out of feeling. So don't you think that's kind of contrary to what you just said?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a lot more personal and on an emotional level.
Yeah.
Than the difference. But that isolation really does cause a lot of creativity, and some of the best writings of Emerson or Thoreau, and even Martin Luther King, they were completely isolated. Thoreau was on Walden Pond, just by himself, just able to really write and just think with himself. And Martin Luther King, when he wrote Letter from Birmingham Jail, he was completely isolated and just writing what he thought he had to do, and I really think it boosts creativity. So,
what do you think about the Birmingham Jail, personally?
I personally loved it. I thought it was some of the best writing I've ever read in my life, and I thought his words were so inspirational. The way he tied together all the historical events and brought them to the current social issues, I thought that was ingenious, and it really, really affected the way I viewed the time.
I completely agree with you. It was the best writing I've read, and it really inspired me that writing can really change people's mind, and the way you write, how persuasion, and it really struck me that him being in jail, and nowadays, you see people in jail, they go crazy, they're drug lord and stuff, but it became that MLK in jail produces a remarkable thing. That's really contrarian. Yeah, I think the idea is pretty amazing.
And even Thoreau, when Thoreau went to jail, he said it was a great experience,
yeah.
And it kind of solidified his views on the world. And I think the prison experience is really straying away from rehabilitation, but these men seem to have found a way around that and a way to connect to the people. I mean, when MLK was writing, he knew that he was writing to a bunch of white Christians, and he very smartly connected the issues to Jesus and Christianity, which was a great way to connect to the people, which
Well, so now do you think isolation is a good thing? Because I feel like today's society, people view isolation as something bad. You shouldn't be alone. You should be always partying or texting your friend, or that's like the cool way to do everything. But if you look back in time, every production of like a great novel or even Buddha, anything like or Muhammad or anyone wrote the Bible or whatever, it came out of isolation in like a forest or some sort of that activity.
And even tying back to what the comedian said from the little segment that we watched, people are just nowadays scared to be of being themselves and just being alone. And I think some of the greatest ideas can come from just self-realization without being affected by other people's views, which is necessary in another sense, but it's also very essential to get a firm belief in what you think is morally correct and right.
Wait, what was the comedian's name?
I can't. It's really slipping my mind, but you remember the cell phone?
Yeah.
Just the
Yeah,
fear to be alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but, so do you think isolation is good, or
I think it's necessary. I think it's a nice balance that you need to keep.
do you ever try to isolate yourself?
I do. Sometimes when I'm just like walking on the beach or whatever, usually with music, just really connecting to my surroundings.
Alright, we gotta move on to Junot Diaz. It's already 7 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that went
Wow.
really fast. Alright, so I think he really relates well, like his advocacy and everything, it really relates well to MLK.
They both dealt with such harsh, like, racial issues, racial tension, and just the segregation of just by race, MLK being African American and Junot Diaz being a Dominican immigrant. I think that's just a really tough times, and it's just we're still struggling with it today.
Did Junot ever said that he isolated himself, or no?
I'm not quite sure, but he did talk a lot about the family dynamics of the different races, which a lot of us aren't familiar with. We're so accustomed to our own family dynamic, but just with Junior and Rafa, it's just very violent, and you can also see the violence also in Fences, with Troy grabbing Rose's arm against her will, and just Corey coming at him. There's just a lot of violence in both of these families, and it could tie back to the times that it was happening, or it's just a racial thing that was present.
Well, that's interesting that Fences has that domestic violence thing, kind of, because Junot Diaz is an advocate to stop domestic violence. Is that true? I think so.
Yeah, he was really against it. Then when we brought up the question of is it a man's problem or a woman's problem, he kind of reflected that the more powerful, he also tied it into race, the more powerful person will do whatever they can to not relinquish that power.
Oh, yeah. So you're talking about how we had a talk, how we had a speaker a while ago that talked about, yeah. I think, that's a really good point too, because you know how Juno said that, the powerful will never give up their privileges and everything, and the only way out of it is for the victim, pretty much, to struggle and
to peacefully assemble.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what MLK did. Like, you can't just wait for the whites to give up their power. They're never going to.
And it's similar to the way Emerson affected Thoreau, just the peaceful spreading of ideas and thoughts, which is really necessary in our society.
It's good.